Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and happy Friday. Well, the Democrats finally got what they wanted, or so they think. Donald Trump is now officially a, quote, convicted felon. He's also our next president, so you should probably include that term in your celebratory smashes of the football on the left. I mean, great. And by the way, one of the reasons he is going to be our next president is because of all this nonsensical lawfare. So go ahead. I think it's the ultimate Pyrrhic victory. In a New York City courtroom this morning, Judge Juan Merchan handed down the sentence of an unconditional discharge to President Trump. This means no jail time or any other punishment, and many believe the conviction will eventually be thrown out on appeal. It will be thrown out on appeal. Mark my words. It's going to be thrown out on appeal. It actually stands a very decent chance of being thrown out by the New York appellate court right above this guy, Merchan. And I believe the New York State Court of Appeals, this is eventually going away. So enjoy it while you can. You can say convicted felon right after you refer to him as Mr. President. And it will be a limited period of months. And then it will get reversed. And so will that label. And you helped to get him elected. So with this lawfare, I hope that makes you feel good at night. I'm not exactly sure why the Democrats feel so smug about this. None of this stopped the prosecutor of Donald Trump in the New York State Supreme case, Joshua Steinglass, from droning on. This man is ridiculous about just how terrible of a man he thinks Donald Trump is. Watch.
The defendant's conduct before, during, and after this trial also merits consideration. Instead of preserving, protecting, and defending our constitutionally established system of criminal justice, the defendant, the once and future President of the United States, has engaged in a coordinated campaign to undermine its legitimacy. Far from expressing any kind of remorse for his criminal conduct, the defendant has purposefully bred disdain for our judicial institutions and the rule of law. Such threats are designed to have a chilling effect, to intimidate those who have the responsibility to enforce our laws. Put simply, this defendant has caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system and has placed officers of the court in harm's way. Sentencing the defendant permits this court to enter judgment, to cement the defendant's status as a convicted felon.
And that's what it was all about. The nerve of this guy to say it's Donald Trump who caused damage to the institution, to the court, to the justice system, with his reaction to this case. The absolute nerve. Talk about putting the cart before the horse. You, sir, are to blame for all of that. You! Donald Trump called it out for the joke, the absolute insulting joke of a proceeding that it was. You caused the lack of trust in an institution that had been mostly previously respected. Even President Biden, when he pardoned his son Hunter, called out how he doesn't trust the justice system. So please spare me. This whole thing was rushed to sentencing by a judge who was determined to be able to call Trump a convicted felon for that reason only, because it's been about politics from the start. These losers wrapping themselves in sanctimony. Alvin Bragg was out there, the will of the jury must be heard, must be done. Who am I to interfere with the jury process? The judge too. We're just like public service servants who have to do what the jury said. Otherwise it'd be a real insult. Give me a break. You two orchestrated this from the beginning. You've been working hand in hand to make sure you could just get this label on him. You wanted it so much earlier. I know, sweethearts. It was so important. You desperately wanted it earlier so that maybe it could affect the election. But you failed. You got your conviction. No one gave a shit. Even the left-wing media recognized that this case was a joke. So you failed utterly. in doing anything other than creating sympathy for Donald Trump and making yourselves look like idiots. And then rather than just saying like, let's walk it back, we've had enough embarrassment, you rushed to try to get this declaration as though it was going to be meaningful. And it means nothing other than you've additionally irritated the next president. Let's see how that works out for you. I look forward to watching it, frankly. And probably created more sympathy for many people in looking at Trump, seeing how unfair this is. You got CNN's top legal analyst saying this whole thing is unconstitutional. These charges are probably unconstitutional. Okay, so it's not going well for you, Mr. Steinglass, or for you, Judge Merchan. In addition to making this sentencing hearing happen, which didn't have to, and Steinglass and his boss, Alvin Bragg, pursuing it all the way up to the Supreme Court because Trump tried to stop the sentencing, saying, for the same reasons you can't try a president for official acts because he's immune, thanks to that Supreme Court ruling, you can't come after a president-elect like this and make him sit for sentencing. He's got other things he's got to do for the nation. And ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court said in a ruling, no, we're going to let this play out. The harm to you is minimal. It was Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts who did not side with the four other conservatives, costing Trump that decision. She's getting more and more like Roberts every day, and that's not a good thing. In any event, so he had to sit for it, and he had to be sentenced. But that's why they wanted it so desperately today. There was no reason. Judge Merchan had said, I'm not going to impose jail time. Like he telegraphed. It's basically, I'm just going to slap him on the wrist. The whole point of doing this was so that we can call him a convicted felon. We really, really work so hard to be able to call him a convicted felon. So that's what we're going to do. So, okay, you got it. Now, President Trump was allowed to appear over Zoom, which is unusual. That's great. Thank you for accommodating the next president of the United States. He's down there meeting with Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, all of whom have come in and bent the knee. Do it. Good. Jeff Bezos left his prostitute-looking wife for 2 minutes, or soon to be, to go over and bend the knee. Have you seen the pictures of this woman down in St. Bart? I'm sorry, she dresses like a prostitute. They're all bending the knee for Donald Trump, so he's busy, Judge Merchan. He doesn't have a whole lot of shit ton of time to deal with you and your political theater. But he appeared via Zoom, and then the judge did something he hasn't done before in this whole process, adding to the theater, which was he released the audio. That's how we just got to hear Steinglass. None of this thing was on camera or on audio, remember? We didn't get to hear audio of Stormy Daniels. We saw the sketch artist painting of her. And she took the stand. But today, Judge Merchan really, he waxed poetic about the case from the bench. And I think he knew he was going to say something truly profound that America would want to hear. And maybe they'd want to hear Steinglass talk about what a shit Trump is and what like a really important case this was and how poorly the justice system has been treated by Trump. So they released the audio. Meantime, that included the audio of Donald Trump, who was participating in the whole thing from Florida, where he said that he is completely innocent and that this case was a political witch hunt from the start. Watch.
It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. Any of it. That was done by an accountant. This has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. And I'd just like to explain that I was treated very, very unfairly.
Judge Merchan, who, again, he could have done this not at all. He could have done this with no audio, or he could have done this, if necessary, after Trump's presidency, but no, rushed it on. He could have given the evil Trump, who interfered with an election. That's what Steinglass said. He made this from a stupid business records case in which he wrote down legal expenses for money he gave to a lawyer to make a nasty complainant go away. That sounds like a legal expense to me. They turned it from a business records case into a hush money case into a federal election interference case, one that the feds refused to bring, he could have given him up to 4 years in prison. That's serious business. You interfere with an election. The scheme that he was actually accused of, lying to the American public, committing fraud so that they wouldn't know what they were electing. It was all lies. All of it was freaking lies. So, but if you follow their logic, he deserved 4 years in prison, right? So why did we have a DA go in there and say, I consent that there should be no prison time? Because they had to. They had to in order to get this thing held before the inauguration, because they knew Trump would appeal it. And one of the reasons the Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear this right now. We're kind of not interested. Trump can take this case up on appeal. By the way, it's going to be reversed. They didn't say that, but I'm sure it will be. One of the reasons the Supreme Court said, we're not going to take it right now, there's no urgency, is because they said, look, the judge is telegraphing he's not getting any jail time, so we don't need to get involved yet. So that's why the prosecutor and the judge were both like, there'll be no prison time. Please let us hold our hearing in which we get to label him. We want the big CF label. Don't interfere. Okay, so he could have given him 4 years in prison. He said in advance he wouldn't, and he didn't. And he said he was distinguishing between Trump, the citizen, and Trump, the president.
To be clear, the protections afforded the office of the president are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow. This court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
Oh,
thank you.
Please. Fuck you. Sorry. Give me a break. I wish you Godspeed. Bullshit. This is such a farce. Joining me now to react to all of this is attorney and Rumble host Viva Frei. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Here's a shocking truth about New Year's resolutions. Whether you want to lose weight, improve your energy, or beat that embarrassing post-meal bloat, nothing works if your gut is not healthy first. This is why for 2025, I want to introduce you to Just Thrive Probiotic. Most probiotics die in your harsh stomach acid before they can do much good. Just Thrive Probiotic is the only probiotic clinically proven to arrive in your gut 100% alive. That means better digestion, healthy immunity, great energy, and easy weight management. It comes in capsule form or berry-flavored gummies, so there's an option for everyone in the family. Plus, it's backed by an industry-leading 100% money-back guarantee. Love the way you feel or get a full product refund. No questions asked. Ready to transform your health in 2025? Just thrivehealth.com. And you can use the code Megyn for 20% off your first 90-day bottle, okay? It's visit justthrivehealth.com, promo code Megyn. 20% off your first 90-day bottle. That's like getting a month for free. Here's to your best health with justthrivehealth.com. Check it out. Viva, great to have you today. This is just so outrageous, is it not?
It's when you appreciate what they did. And they took they turned what would otherwise been a misdemeanor bookkeeping error, a time-barred misdemeanor, into a 34-count felony charge indictment conviction to then give an unconditional discharge just so that they could call him a convicted felon. It was a scam from the beginning. The judge, I like the only reason he gave the unconditional discharge is because any other sanction would have been obviously immediately appealed or unenforceable because Trump takes office in a week and a half. And so they get that header. The only question now is these scoundrels, what do they do with it? Do they go for an impeachment 3.0 now that they actually have a crime to claim is the high crime and misdemeanor to go impeach them a third time? But it's corruption of the highest order. And you pointed it out. The audacity of them to accuse Trump of being the one who discredited the legal system. These people are Darvo narcissists. Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The victimizers pretending to be the victims and pretending that the victim is the one who caused the distrust in the system, when it's everything that they have done from day one to make people realize the legal system, at least in New York, is so corrupt. You got to get your stuff and pack up and leave, because nobody is safe in New York.
First of all, I love how you pronounce misdemeanor, misdemeanor, like it's a contestant in one of Trump's beauty contests.
A misdemeanor sounds like I'm misgendering the misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor sounds like a feminist demeanor contestant.
I think it's the correct way of doing it. No, but it was a time-barred misdemeanor at worst, and they don't even know what they predicated the felony predicate acts on. Like, you asked the jury, what did you convict him on? I don't know. It was he bookkeeping error. How did you bump it up to a felony? Yeah, but when the judge said you don't even have to identify which of the underlying felonies this predicate act was based on, you know that you're dealing with an outcome-driven process and not a justice-driven process. I just thought that judge, and as much as he's an idiot, a totally corrupt hack, whose daughter, worth mentioning every time we talk about him, his daughter was fundraising off of this prosecution, that discredits the system. But I thought he had a little bit more savvy to say, all right, after the Supreme Court came down and said you can't admit evidence that is adduced from presidential acts, he would say, okay, I've got to vacate the verdict and blame the Supreme Court. No.
Yeah, because we definitely did that.
Without a question. And in his ruling, he says, look, none of the evidence related to presidential acts because it was all in furtherance of a private act of fraud. Bullcrap. But even if it were, he says the error would be harmless because of the overwhelming evidence of guilt. I mean, this is communist level, find me the man, I will find you the crime, presumption of guilt, not innocence. But I thought he would have the good sense to say, okay, I can vacate this verdict, save my own face on appeal, because it will get overturned on appeal. I agree with you on that, and blame the Supreme Court. No. He went full throttle, and Amy Coney Barrett, the turncoat that Robert Barnes on our show Sunday night warned about, she was the turncoat. And they say, because this corrupt hack of a judge undertook informally not to impose a prison sentence, we'll go ahead and allow the sentencing. He could have given Trump money in that sentence, and they should not have allowed the judge to proceed with the sentencing. I agree.
The Supreme Court should have stepped in here to say, this is not going to happen. We just issued a ruling on presidential immunity. We just issued a ruling saying that you can't even use evidence of a president's official conduct against him in a criminal trial, which was definitely done in this case. And we are staying this proceeding until we are able to handle the appeal, or until post-presidency, in which case it can follow the normal course.
Yeah, and not just that also. And shame on you, Mershon, for not respecting our Supreme Court ruling. This is a Supreme Court, at least with Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, who have no respect for their own rulings. And they've made that public now. They issued a ruling. It said, presidential immunity for core constitutional acts, presumption of immunity for in the middle acts, and no immunity for personal acts, but you cannot adduce as evidence that was adduced as presidential conduct, which correspondence with chief of staff and press secretary obviously was on its face. And so what they basically said is, we have no respect for our rulings either. Go ahead, Mershon, and take a judicial dump on our ruling and go ahead with your sentencing, because you've undertaken not to jail him. We'll let you do it. They have discredited themselves, and we see, unfortunately, the true colors of Amy Coney Barrett.
I'm worried about her. She's a little squishy, and it's concerning. I'll tell you, just like as a female who leans right, I'm kind of sick of like the female conservatives who get appointed to the Supreme Court, Sandra Day, O'Connor, now Amy Coney Barrett, like being too squishy. Why can't we just get just Judge Aileen Cannon down in Florida? Get a female Alito on there. Get somebody with some rhetorical balls who will hold as fiercely to conservative principles in the judiciary as the left wing does, as Elena Kagan does to the liberal principles. Why are the women so squishy when they get up there on the right?
Well, Roberts is squishy as well, so who knows how he identifies. But the bottom line, and she's young, she's there for a long time. But you imagine the rationale. They said, yeah, we issued this ruling that the evidence was inadmissible but because the judge announced his intention not to jail, we'll let him go through his sentencing. No, the judge weird. Desecrated. Yeah, the judge desecrated the ruling of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, we don't really care. That's what it's worth. And now you get your convicted felon title, so you can do Lord knows what with. I do wonder.
But that's an interesting. Okay, let's talk about that. You raise an interesting point, as you always do, Viva. Is it more than just the label? Do you think the next move, because here we are, January 10th, we got 10 days until the inauguration. Do you think they actually do try yet another maneuver of insurrectionist, or I don't know what they're going to say, but they've done a lot of legal gymnastics to try to get him and stop him from taking the oath?
Well, Megyn, remember the legal gymnastics. Back in impeachment 1.0, that was the quid pro quo, where Democrat, left-leaning, lawless lawyers and members of Congress said, we don't even need a crime to impeach. It's a purely political process. We can impeach him for the color of his tie. And that was to get around the fact that there was no crime committed with that quid pro quo conversation. Second time,
phone call.
The perfect phone call. There was no crime there. And so they had to say, well, impeachment, sure, it says for other high crimes and misdemeanors, but it's a political process. He doesn't actually have to commit a crime. That's what they said in 1.0. In 2.0, for the insurrection, they then had, at least on its face, on paper, a crime. Now they have a confirmed crime, a convicted felon. So now they don't have to make the argument, oh, it's not a political process. This is now a judicial one. We've got the convicted felon status, so we can go for impeachment 3.0 because we can now point to the actual crime upon which this impeachment 3.0 might be based. They are that stupid and that kamikaze reckless in their pursuit of opposing Trump. Jamie Raskin, who was infamously caught on that mic saying, we might have to declare civil war conditions when we disqualify Trump because of the insurrection clause. Well, Supreme Court came down 9-0 and said, no, you can't do that. So let's find another way to do it. Either impeach him before he takes office or impeach him right after he takes office. I don't think there's the political will to do it or the public support to tolerate it, but they're doing something. You're dealing with scoundrel scheme artists. And the only question is, what are they scheming about now behind closed doors? This is one indication of what they could do with this convicted felon, because I think it is a little bit more than just the title for the next 10 days.
Because, they don't control the House, and they're not going to control the House. They didn't before, and they don't in the new Congress. And so they can't impeach him. They don't have the votes to impeach him. And they certainly don't, now they don't control the Senate either. So they're not going to be able to, even in some weird world in which the House lost its mind and impeached Trump, they could never get a conviction. So I don't know that the move is political in the body of Congress, or if there's some legal maneuver in a court they still think they could pull off.
That was another thing I'm wondering. When Raskin comes out and says, we got to disqualify him for insurrection, maybe they're going to try something to, they had to certify the Electoral College results because they didn't get the conviction in time for that. Maybe they try to disqualify him now for being a convicted felon. It's settled law, but settled law has never stopped them from trying. So they're definitely going to try something else. The only question is what. And for
can we talk about on this front? They are trying to get the Jack Smith report of just how bad Trump was. He owes this report to Joe Biden or to Merrick Garland. And Trump has so far successfully stopped that report from getting released. He's like, these cases have been dismissed, so just stop. But there is some saber rattling that he's going to submit it, and we're going like that. Now you're back in the insurrection lane.
Yep.
And, a possible legal challenge on, no. Just because the case got thrown out doesn't mean he's not an insurrectionist who is not capable of taking office.
Well, especially since the impeachment process, it doesn't require a conviction of a high crime. It just requires one to allegedly have been committed. And so they say, oh, well, sure, it got tossed at the court level, but this report shows insurrection-y behavior. It's so preposterous and unlawful and lawless that they want to release portions of a report that was produced in the context of charges that should never have been brought, that themselves were predicated on evidence that was falsified by the FBI, that raided with authorization to use lethal force the former president and leading presidential candidate at the time. This is, I don't know if it's communist is the right word, but it is lawlessness of the highest order. The people who need to be behind bars and need to be tried, convicted, and jailed are the Jack Smiths of the world, are the Merrick Garlands of the world, are the Mayorkas, just because I dislike him as well, but are the Raskins of the world, the ones who publicly announce. After a fair trial, they would get, in any realm of a lawful universe, convicted. But Jack Smith, the hired mercenary who was unlawfully appointed from the get-go, Citizen Jack Smith, now wants to release portions of a report because Merrick Garland says it's the interest of the public's best interest to see portions of a report that was prepared in a bogus, lawless prosecution. Garland is a criminal as well, in my humble opinion. Hashtag no defamation. I believe the man is a criminal, and he's deliberately trying to undermine justice and doing everything he can to lay whatever groundwork they can do to either attempt another impeachment. Hey, go a third time. They broke the glass once and twice. They've turned the impeachment process into Halloween candy. Just go for a third time. What's to lose?
Well, I mean, unless they're going to use that Jack Smith report, if they get their hands on it, to again say he's an insurrectionist and therefore shouldn't be allowed to take the oath of office, then it's utterly pointless. Then we're back in the land of, what are you doing? You lost. He won the presidency. No one gives a shit.
No, but they're trying to burn it down so they can rule over the ashes, or at least piss on the ashes. The only silver lining in drawing our attention back to the report and January 6th is it's a reminder that Trump takes office on January 20th. The first thing he does is pardon all of the Jan 6ers. Pardon all of them. They've made a mockery of impeachment process. Joe Biden has desecrated the pardon process. You'll pardon the actual victims of lawfare and political persecution. But no, they are a group of people. They will pop the ball if they don't like the fact that they're losing the game and storm off the field.
Let's go back to, just for one more minute, this warning by this judge, because we're going to hear a lot more about this. Sorry, by this prosecutor, that he's mad that Trump is remorseless. I mean, it's just absurd. He's talking about him. I heard Trey Gowdy saying this, who's a criminal prosecutor now, a Fox News anchor, saying if he was talking about him like they're weighing the death penalty. He's shown no remorse for his crimes, Your Honor. It's like, okay, this is a misdemeanor business records case. Stop it. And Trump has maintained his innocence, which is real, from the beginning. He's no remorse for the people he's hurt. Who again? Who are those people? Then going on to, he's spread disdain for our institutions and the rule of law. He's caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system. I mean, the gall, Viva, the gall of these guys to put that on Trump.
Megyn, it's confession through projection, as they are accusing their adversaries of what they are guilty of, either for creating confusion or for just projecting off their own guilt. Audacity. You know what takes what is compromising? The judge's daughter raising money for Kamala Harris, Democrat PAC's Adam Schiff, off of this prosecution.
Tens of millions.
Tens of millions. Judge Juan Marchand, she's talking about her dad having disdain for Trump and his use of social media. It's just confession through projection. There's no other way to describe it. But they get out there and they get the sound bites out there. So your Joy Reids, the Views of the world can run with the sound bites. Can you imagine? What did Trump do that violated or undermined anything as relates to the Constitution? Exercise freedom of speech? To raise awareness of the corruption of the court system? They gagged Trump in the context of this case to prevent him from raising awareness for the corruption, and then fault him for talking about the judge's family. Well, maybe if the judge's family wasn't intimately involved with this entire prosecution process, he wouldn't be talking about the judge's family. And so they fault the victim for raising awareness of the corruption. But this will get overturned. I think it does go nowhere, and people see it for what it is. But it's a wholesale desecration of one of the pillars of a civilized society, which is why, New York is turning into a place where everyone should pull their assets, pull their investments, and don't drive through when you're driving from Montreal to Florida.
Yeah, it's not only, of course, this prosecution against him, but the civil case brought by Letitia James for, now cost Trump $500 million, which is currently being laughed out of the appellate courts. I mean, I think when all is said and done, absolutely none of these will stand. Fani Willis got bounced. Jack Smith was forced to dismiss both of his federal cases against Trump. The New York case is what it is. We've discussed that for the last half hour. And then there's the Tish James civil case against him. The E. Jean Carroll thing, unfortunately, is not going anywhere. That one's going to stand, I think. But the Tish James one is going away.
They might reduce the quantum on the E. Jean Carroll case, but you want to talk about undermining faith in the judicial system. You have, I call him colloquially, New York nipple judge Engeron, the guy who's posting topless selfies on his website page.
True.
It's horrendous, where he's bragging about the orders that he's issuing against Eric Trump, where he's on record on video 10 years ago talking about the tools that he has at his disposal to come to the judicial findings that fit with his preconceived biases. I mean, it's what's amazing is, in as much as Trump in 2016 revealed the insidiousness of the corruption of mainstream media and the fake news, he has done so as well in revealing the wholesale weaponization of all levels of prosecution, Department of Justice, court systems of certain states. The real question is, he gets into office, he's got to right some of these wrongs and reestablish some faith in the system, and he's got to pick the proper course of action to make that happen.
I can't wait to see what he does. A word before I let you go. As you say, Juan Marchand properly, I'm reminded that you're from Canada, OG. Not now,
French
you're not there
Canada.
now, but so you're, you've got a connection up there. And what do you make of Justin Trudeau finally waving the white flag and admitting everyone hates him and he has to step down?
He's announced his intention to step down, prorogued Parliament, so there's no government in session until March 24. They're going to hold internal leadership races to find his replacement. I've said it before. Too little, too late, but better late than never. I made a joke, sort of when I put out an update after that happened. It's like, imagine being so hated that everyone on earth is happy that you're resigning or announce your intention to resign, except perhaps your ex-wife, who might have to spend more time with you now once you're out of office. Everybody hates the man, even people within his own party, and especially people within his own party. So it is too little, too late. The replacement will probably be, new boss will be just as bad as the old, and the devil we know is probably, going to be maybe even less bad than the devil we don't. His replacements, Chrystia Freeland, who is Ukraine First, board of trustees of the WEF, would be no better, probably worse as a leader. Mark Carney, another, globalist WEF stooge, probably no better. But it's an indication that the Liberal Party is in free fall. Internal fighting is always fun to see when it's the other side. Good riddance to bad rubbish when it comes to Justin Trudeau. He truly will go down as the darkest stain on Canadian history, closely followed by his father, Pierre Elliott.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because sometimes when you see these people in the news go, whether it's like a news anchor being fired or a leader falling, normally you have like a mixed emotion where you think, good, bye, but come on, I'm kind of going to miss criticizing them. This is how I felt when Stelter got fired from CNN.
I was going to say him in particular. Yeah. I was going to say Stelter. I kind of felt bad for him. He's an innocent-looking potato head.
Well, I didn't feel bad for him, but I felt bad for me because I wasn't going to be having his editorial to rip on. But then they brought him back, so it was great. But anyway, with Trudeau, I don't feel like that. I'm like, get rid of him. He's such a pernicious, terrible force. Even our friends up north who voted for him, even those people do not deserve him.
They voted for him not once. I believe it was thrice. But he's really, it's indescribable how destructive a force he has been for Canada. And he was bad before COVID. And then COVID really released the inner tyrant. Censorship, division, identity politics, full-on tyranny with government responses to COVID. He's a very, very bad man, and he will be remembered as such. The only problem is his replacement will probably be no better, so we got to hope for, it's going to be a conservative majority government, whether you like Pierre Poilievre or not. I'm just hoping that some people from my party that I ran for, the People's Party of Canada, can get some seats into Parliament to have some meaningful opposition voices and some good common sense. That is nationalist in the good sense of protecting Canada and having Canada come first, not Canada come second, third, and fourth to a variety of other international globalist interests. Well,
if not, it could come 51st as our latest state, says President Trump, if he has to keep paying $250 billion to it.
He'll have to make 4 states out of it. He'll have to have the Maritimes. He'll have to have French Canada and Quebec be a separate state. They're going to want to separate Ontario, the Liberal state, and then you have Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, which would be sort of the Texas affiliate states. But it'd have to be
that's
more
the only way, because otherwise
state.
it's just like adding, one of these left-wing groups that they get, like making DC a state so that they can have 2 more senators on the left. We don't need that. We got enough problems.
Yep.
Viva, a pleasure as always.
Megyn, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, joining me up next, Jesse Kelly. Speaking of, Viva says is communist, what they're doing. Jesse wrote a whole book about how the left has gone full communist. That's what he calls them for a reason. We're with him next. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of this past June, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
I will never apologize for standing up for an LGBTQ2 plus.
And what do you and your family do to cut back on plastics?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic. Away from plastic towards paper. Like drink box water bottles sort of things. I actually never take selfies. Everyone else takes selfies. I don't take selfies.
Maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to look into
we
that.
like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind. If people want to wear a mask, that is okay. It prevents you from breathing or speaking moistly on them. Oh, what a terrible image.
Oh, God.
I appreciate calling it makeup, but it was blackface.
Have you since been made aware or remembered of other instances, and if so, how many?
I am wary of being definitive about this. It is exactly the example of the kinds of things you need to do to counter the she session and turn it into a she covering. I will never apologize for standing up for an LGBTQ2 plus.
Bye, Justin. Well, we will miss you a little. The she session and turn it into a she covery. That's a real person who exists and was running Canada. I mean, currently is running Canada. Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. Unbelievable. Back here, we have our own absurd leaders. As you know, just take a look at California right now. The LA fires continue to rage on. And the failure of Mayor Karen Bass is becoming more and more obvious by the day. She's refusing to take any accountability for the devastation. I mean, none. Plus, President Trump chatting it up and laughing with former President Obama at President Carter's funeral yesterday. Did you see this tape? It went everywhere. It's very, very telling. Hitler's so funny. He's hilarious. Hitler's just a barrel of laughs. We're going to get to it all with my next guest. Jesse Kelly is here. He's host of The Jesse Kelly Show and also I'm Right, which you can find at youtube.com/JesseKellyDC. Jesse, welcome back. Great to have you.
It's great to be here, Megyn. Thank you for that barrel of laughs watching Justin Trudeau. Just, man, our friends up north, congratulations. You finally get to be rid of that turd.
You know, it's like the people who say it's herstory instead of history. He's one of those guys. This is not one of your guys, Jesse, who you'd be having a beer with.
No, you know what's funny, Megyn? It's funny and it's also sad. As you mentioned when you were laughing about it, you mentioned, and that's the guy who was running Canada. And then you pointed to our own leaders and LA and things like that. I think, at least for me, I think we do this thing that's very, very natural, and that we look at these absurd people and we assume, yeah, they're ridiculous, they're dumb, they're absurd, they're commies, they're all these things. But we assume if the beep hits the fan, that at least surely there are competent people, around them. There are people who will figure it out. If it gets bad, if there's a wildfire, if there's a this, if there's that, surely they have someone they can turn to. Yeah, that guy's like a caricature, but surely there's someone. But the truth is that's not true. That's not true at all. The worst, dumbest, most despicable people in the world now run every aspect of Western society. And it's frightening when you think about it. So we don't think about it. We lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that there are competent people there. There aren't. We're in a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. The situation in LA and the leadership vacuum is becoming more and more apparent every day. So you have Gavin Newsom on camera when asked, hey, what about the fact that the fire hydrants didn't have any water in them? Says, oh, the local leaders, they're going to comment on that. The local leaders will respond to that. The local leaders were in Ghana, or we now find out the deputy mayor was on leave for allegedly calling in a fake bomb threat. So those are the local leaders, Jesse. Nowhere to be found. And you know what was happening at the fire department, where we know that the top 3 leaders in charge look more like a cabal of Smith attendees than tough, grizzled firemen ready to put out fires. I mean, I think everybody in the LAFD management is a lesbian who is bragging about her lesbianism and really, really proud of her short haircut and short stature and inability to rescue men from burning buildings.
Yeah, and not even hot lesbians either, which is super disappointing.
No, not the lipstick kind.
This is what happens under Democrat rule. And it's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. There are real consequences in places like California, which I actually love. I know it's fashionable to dump on California, but it's just so beautiful. And I have so many friends that I love it so much. It's paradise. And it breaks my heart what has happened to it. I don't enjoy watching beauty turn ugly. I don't enjoy watching it at all. But this is the consequence of voting Democrat. And legions of people in California, when they go out to cocktail parties, they get with friends. It's just what you do. Of course you vote Democrat. Yeah, we voted Democrat. We voted for this Democrat. We voted for that Democrat. And it's just kind of always taught or thought of as this throwaway line. Yes, we vote blue. Ha, 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 we're so Democrat. Well, if you do that for long enough, you will have these weapons-grade morons take positions of power up and up and up and up and up the chain, and soon the entire chain is hot, stinky garbage, and you have one of the great cities in the United States of America put to the torch, and no one seems to be able to stop it. These are consequences that are downstream of the behavior of voters. It's really the point I keep trying to make over and over and over again. The consequences of neglecting your elections, of just sitting it out. I'm not interested. I vote Democrat. Ha, ha, ha. Look how lib I am. Well, the consequences of that are you wake up one morning and Los Angeles looks like something out of a Mad Max film. That's what you get.
Yeah, totally. On the subject of the fire chief, it's getting worse by the minute. So you've got the fire chief who is, first line of her bio, touting her gayness and the fact that she's a woman. Okay, no one cares. And then you've got her second in command, who is named, so the first lady is Christina Crowley. She's the first LGBTQ fire chief, salary $439,000 plus. Then her second in command is Christina Kepner. This person, by the way, then the person who's, I think, third in command or high up is the first black. Okay, so second, let me just get it straight. Christina Crowley, first LGBTQ fire chief. Then under her is Christina Kepner, first lesbian assistant chief. Then under her is Christine Larson. They're all Christine or Christina. She's also a lesbian. She's also, everyone's a lesbian. I don't know why. And she's also black, and she's in charge of equity within the FD. I don't know why. And she also makes more than the assistant chief. She makes almost $400,000, $399,000. So they're making $439,000, $265,000, $399,000. And what we get is Christina, lesbian. Why, Jesse? You tell me why.
Well, because the object of this is an assault, a never-ending, relentless assault on white men, white Christian men that has been institutionalized throughout the United States of America. And I don't know why it's controversial to talk about this at all. Corporate America, the education system, the government itself under Joe Biden has been very honest about this thing. You brought up the LA Fire Department. I'm sure you've played the videos on your show. I've been out of town, but I'm sure you've played them. I've seen them on social media of these people running ad campaigns bragging about this is how many women we're going to hire, this is how many gays we're going to hire, this is when you do things like that, what you're announcing is we are taking a certain demographic and we're just simply cutting them out of the equation. And beyond the rampant lesbianism, where apparently to find the leadership of the LA Fire Department, they went to the local softball team. Apparently, they focused on hiring women as well as firefighters. Now, I am as pro-woman as anybody underneath the sun, but why are we focusing on women? This is a physical, brutal job that involves wearing a lot of weight, carrying a lot of weight, doing physical things. You see those dudes out there in LA hauling people out, hauling equipment out. It's a brutally physical job. So why in the world would you focus on the person who's physically weaker? Well, the only reason you would do that is you're a psychopathic cultural Marxist interested in burning everything down, and you really don't care if Los Angeles burns as long as you get to hire you and all your lesbian friends for $499,000 a year. It's pathetic. And there are consequences to it. I keep coming back to this. We like to point at this stuff and we laugh. Megyn, you laugh, I laugh. It's hysterical. Why do we need this? Why do we need that? We laugh, but downstream of that, people die. That's the thing. There are real, genuine consequences to setting aside merit and focusing on box checking and checking this, but she checked that box. We got enough gays. Have we got enough women? We laugh and we even call it woke. I've been guilty of that before. I actually have grown to hate that word because it presents like, oh, they're just so goofy. They're kind of woke. It's not that. It's freaking evil. It's discriminatory. It's evil, and people die because of it.
It's like the NBA having a DEI program where they're prioritizing short people. We don't have enough short people. Without asking, why don't we have that many short people in the NBA, right? Why don't we have more women in the fire department? There's a really good reason. Most of them cannot pass the test unless you lower the standards. Strapping 60-pound of gear on your back and then climbing up a ladder and then going into a house. And on top of all that, rescuing a grown man takes a lot of strength that most women, 99%, do not have. Or it's like a police department having a DEI program that prioritizes people in wheelchairs. Like, there is a reason why it's not a good fit. It doesn't mean you're discriminatory against or can't stand or hate people in wheelchairs or short people. It means it's not a good fit for this particular job. And while women probably great, equal, if not better in some cases, than men at being an EMS, right? Can do all the life-saving procedures that happen in a hospital or once you get the body out of the house. 100%. Of course, let's be honest. Of course they can do that. But why do we have to pretend in the name of, equity, whatever, that women are equal to men when it comes to actually doing the job of a firefighter, whatever. All this is academic because we don't know whether it played any role. All we know is that the LAFD was very, very focused on DEI and hiring women and not so focused on the fire hydrants. But listen, I want to show you one thing. So the second woman, Christina Crowley, the first there's Kristen Crowley, the chief, then Christina Kepner, the first lesbian assistant chief. It's just ridiculous. And this video of hers going viral where she was asked about the job and these potential problems in rescuing people who are much larger than your average woman. I don't know about whether they're average, whether they're bigger than Christina Kepner. Watch.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Only about 5% of working firefighters are women. This is what they're calling attention to. By the way, correction, that was one of the other Christines. That was Christine Larson, the first Black Lesbian Equity Bureau chief. She was basically saying, Jesse, if somebody like you finds himself in a fire, F off, you're to blame.
Well, the religious zealots, as we talked about many times, Megyn, and religious zealots will kill people and let people die on behalf of their religion. People in America have a hard time understanding that the far left radical types like that are, how many people would have to die for them to come around to your side? All of them. All of them. They are serving a cause they view as higher than putting out fires or the fire department or Los Angeles. And if people have to die because of it, it's no sweat off their back. And in fact, they put themselves on video bragging about it. It's really quite something.
It's amazing. You got the one who's like, I'm a woman and I'm gay. You're hired. Then the assistant, I'm a woman and I'm gay. Well, you're hired. Then you got this third person coming in saying, I'm a woman and I'm gay and I'm black. And that person will probably be the next chief if they continue along the way they've been going. Jesse Kelly stays with me. Don't go away. He's hosted the Jesse Kelly Show. Check it out at youtube.com. Don't go away. You know how much my family and I love our dogs, right? Yes, even sweet Strudwick, he's actually getting much better. Cannot imagine life without them. These guys are lucky. They've got a great life. But some dogs are not so lucky. And this is why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it for more than 45 years now. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need, and check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would like other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Jesse, the LA fire chief, the top Kristen female lesbian, was on CBS News with Norah O'Donnell trying to defend this disaster that we're looking at out in California. And she was asked about the fact that the mayor cut $17 million from their budget, the fire department's budget. And the fire chief herself had been jumping up and down about that earlier, saying this is going to cost essential services. Now that the shit has hit the fan, she tried to engage in revisionism, like, huh? Who? What? No. And to her credit, Norah O'Donnell followed up, and here's what happened.
Would that $17 million that had been cut from your budget have made a difference in this fight?
I would say with the lean forward posture that we took, knowing that a $17 million cut, we had to take from somewhere, and that was from the non-essential duties and responsibilities that as the fire department we have taken on over the past many, many years.
But with all due respect, in December you had warned that the budget cuts would severely limit your ability to respond to large-scale emergencies. Is that true or not?
Yes. Yes, so I would say yes, we were limited to a certain factor, yes.
Do you believe that smarmy snake oil shit?
You know, this is part of what bothers me about a lot of things, Megyn, but we can make this about LA because that's what we're talking about here. The leaders in our society now, I mean, so many of them, you see this all throughout the military, whatnot. Where is the sense of pride and sense of duty? Where's it? Why do none of these people ever resign? Why do none of these people ever own anything? I'm talking about mayors. I'm talking about fire chiefs. I'm talking about generals. I'm talking about CEOs. Where is the sense of honor? You know, if you look back at what, like World War II is actually a great example of this. How many commanders, generals, and admirals resigned because they were sad about a battle or men they had lost? We had generals and admirals, not that I'm encouraging this, killing themselves, committing suicide. They got so many letters. They were so sad about troops who died under their command. They felt such a heart that they just killed themselves. They couldn't live with the shame of it. We fought a 20-year GWAT war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and nobody can name for me a single general or admiral who resigned in disgrace. Nobody, not one of them. It's just not even thought of anymore. And you see this in the wake of, honestly, are we calling this a natural disaster, Megyn? I think that's probably not true to call it that. Well, let's just go with that for now, even though it's not true. This is the greatest natural disaster as far as property damage goes in the history of the United States of America. I mean, it's comparable to the Chicago fire, I believe, and no one has resigned. And in fact, nobody has even shown contrition, not mayors, not the fire chief. No one's even gone on the news and said, well, look, I own this. My heart is broken for my city. This is going to be on me. I'm going to get this cleaned up as best I can. And then I'm going to resign. The people deserve better. And in fact, the fact that I just said this, everyone's probably laughing right now because the thought of that is so ridiculous. But that's what leadership is. And that's what we used to have. But immediately you just saw that hag there on television. She's turtling up, got to protect Democrats, got to protect the brand. Everyone just tries to protect the system now instead of having any duty and honor. It drives me crazy.
I'm sorry, but you just listen to this woman, and I'm all for women in leadership positions. I used to know a Secret Service agent when I lived in Virginia, and she lived in my same development. She was like 6'2". She was strong. She was a badass. And I would hire that woman to protect President Trump, to work at the fire department, to do any number of things that men can do. She's probably in the 0.05 percentage point when it comes to women and their physical abilities. I'm not saying it can never happen, but as a rule, it doesn't happen. As a rule, women are too weak for these particular jobs and should not have the standards lowered so that they can do them. This woman doesn't look strong. This woman, to be honest, I'm not trying to be mean, but she looks portly. She doesn't look in shape at all. Neither does that other woman who we showed, the black lesbian Christine. She looks obese. These are firefighters. They're supposed to be in great shape. And that woman, the one who was like, well, that your husband, if I have to carry your husband out of a fire, he's done something wrong. Hello, that's your job. What are you saying? The fact that like everybody who finds themselves sitting in a burning house is not to blame for the fire. What a weird dodge. So you've got these out of shape, portly looking, short in some cases, the other woman looked tall, lesbians who touted their sexuality running LAFD, who won't take responsibility. Then you've got what is clearly a DEI hire mayor, because you have so many Californians saying, I voted for her because I couldn't vote for the white guy over the black woman, Karen Bass. Oh. And here's what she was saying yesterday. No, they were like, oh, no, there's no way. I'm not voting for a white guy over a black woman. And so here she is after she finally got back from Ghana, where she did nothing. Why does the mayor of LA have to be in Ghana for the inauguration of an African prime minister? So she gets grilled. Yes, by CBS reporter John Vigliotti. I think he's local. And here's what she says. Listen to us out there, too.
My crew and I arrived shortly after it started. And for several hours, we watched as hundreds of homes in a neighborhood burned to the ground. We did not see a single fire engine. You were out of the country at the time. My question to you is, what explains this lack of preparation and rapid response?
Let me just say, first and foremost, my number one focus, and I think the focus of all of us here with one voice, is that we have to protect lives, we have to save lives, and we have to save homes. Rest assured that when rest assured, let me finish. Rest assured, when that is done, when we are safe, when lives have been saved and homes have been saved, we will absolutely do an evaluation to look at what worked, what didn't work, and to correct or to hold accountable any body, department, individual, etc.
Do you think your leadership was effective while responding to this disaster?
I just said what I believe is the most important thing for us to do right now.
The answer is no, madam. And by the way, Jesse, so that's like, we'll create like a commission at some point, and many months down the line, the commission will tell us whether any errors were made, passive voice. She won't speak to it. And by the way, just to put the lie to what she's saying, Jesse, her head of waterworks, Janice Quinones, was already out there at least trying to say why the fire hydrants didn't have water. It wasn't a satisfactory explanation, but at least she was speaking to it. So the notion that we must pretend one cannot engage in thought about how the problems that are stopping the fires from getting put out are happening, like you can't engage in any explanation of that right now while it's happening, is bullshit. Her own administration is doing it. She just won't do it.
This is what they do. And this is what happens when you have a society that focuses on a bunch of things that don't matter at all. It's like if I was a runner, or I was signing up to run a marathon, and I never worked out, never ran. I just sat around eating pizzas and tacos the whole time, never worked out, no cardio at all. And then it comes time for race day, and I get up there and I say, I am extremely focused on running the race. I can't wait to run the race. I'm going to run as hard as I can. And looking back at any of the behavior I did leading up to this race is completely inappropriate because it's race day. No, it's extremely inappropriate if one of the biggest cities, the second biggest city in the United States of America, with all that wealth, all that infrastructure, somehow failed its citizens, and clearly it did in ways that that entire neighborhoods are gone. We're not talking blocks or individual homes. Entire neighborhoods are gone. If the second biggest city in the United States of America failed and is currently failing its citizens that badly, no. Accountability starts now. Because you're exactly right, Megyn. This is what the scumbags in the government, federal, state, and local, do all across this country. They try to wait until the anger dies down, because you and I both know, but about 48 hours from now, the fires will be gone, Lord willing, and everyone will be on their phones, hooked on whatever the newest outrage is, and people will move on. And then a month after that, they'll have a commission, they'll have an investigation where they will investigate themselves. And another month or two after that, they'll put something out there that'll get printed on page 45 of the LA Times saying, well, I mean, we're not going to name anyone individually, but clearly we have a couple things we should do here and there. You know what? We probably need more money. And then that's the last anyone will ever hear of it. And you have all these people who've lost everything. And what I'm trying to get through to the American people is we have to start punishing the politicians who run us by taking their power away from them. There is no second option. But there's not.
They'll blame one woman and one woman only, and that woman is Santa Ana. That's the one. It was her fault and her fault alone, and definitely not the fault of Karen Bass or any one of these Kristens or Christines or Christinas trying to run the FD in Los Angeles. Here is, by the way, the fire chief on CBS responding to the criticism of the DEI thing.
Has that effort at diversity been over your efforts in order to fight these fires? Because that's been the criticism. You know it's out there.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, my number one priority is making sure that we can take care of the community that we took an oath to take care of. And with that is our ability to respond to emergency. Number one priority is to make sure that we provide 911 services, EMS, and fire.
Well, you didn't.
But that's not true.
And by the way, what a lame question, right? Like, were your DEI efforts at the expense of planning to fight fires? That's not what do you think she's going to say, right? And just one other point. She seems like this is a woman I would expect to see when I go in for my parent-child teacher conference, right? Like, kind of sweet, nice manner. Like, does that woman instill confidence in you as the person in charge of fighting this, one of the most disastrous blazes the country has ever seen? She doesn't even seem like... I want somebody who looks grizzled, sounds grizzled, and is like, Nora, I don't have time for this shit, but I'm going to give you my top 5 points in what we're doing. Goodbye.
Yeah, no, I want my fire chief to be some 60-year-old man who has to put out his Marlboro Red before he goes on television to tell me about all the training he's got put in for his guys. But what she just said there is a lie. She lied the same way Karen Bass lied. She knows right now that they're under fire, she has to get up here and say, that's my number one priority. But again, back to my marathon analogy, that was not your number one priority. You've been on videotape discussing how your priorities were, we need to stuff more women and more LGBTQ Air Force types and all these people into positions of power. That's been your number one priority leading up to the fire. And now that the fire's here and everyone's angry, you know you're supposed to go on television and say that's your number one priority. But that's not these people's number one priority. It never is. Their number one priority is pushing their sick demonic religion in every single part of this society. And if society has to burn down, well, the revolution is all that matters. Revolution without end, as Mao always said. You always keep the revolution going. Doesn't matter how many planes fall from the sky or houses burn or wars we lose. You keep moving forward. And this is why the right has got to develop some teeth. We really have to sharpen our teeth a lot because the right has been in love with tolerance for the longest time. Well, we have to be nice. We're better than that. That's not who we are. That has been the language of nursery rhyme conservatism for my 43 years on the planet. No, these are evil, psychopathic, demonic children, and they have to be put in their place in order to preserve a polite society. Otherwise, you get to watch one of America's cities burn.
You watch the real life carnage. I mean, the aerials are just absolutely devastating.
It's awful.
Palisades, Pacific Palisades looks like Gaza. Looks like Gaza now. I mean, it completely leveled. And you see some of the videos. I'm actually going to talk to you for a second about some of the celeb videos that have come out because there's a couple who are really sweet and who I like. And I feel so bad. We talked to James Woods. We talked to Adam Carolla. who are still waiting to find out whether their houses are standing. But it's the real people who really tug at your heartstrings. You know what I mean? Like the non-celebs who are like, holy shit. And this woman, Fran, this is actually tweeted out by J.D. Vance this morning. Her name is Fran. She's a resident of Altadena. And she's speaking with Brian Enton of News Nation about what she's looking at as she gets back to see her house destroyed. Look at this.
This is your house?
This is my house. This one right here. We moved in 26 years ago. And we did the floors, and we put in windows and doors and painted and just put, my grandchildren loved it. My son and my daughter-in-law, my family, we hosted Christmas Eve and Christmas Day here, and everybody was here. My little house that I loved. We poured everything into it. We have nowhere to go. We were close neighbors. Buzz and Todd. His mom passed away and they took over the house. John just lost his wife that he adored, but was taking care of that house. She was a Superior Court judge. And Beverly and John, so much love. She was so incredible. And the house is gone. They're all gone. See, Debbie and us and Tina, our children went to school together from kindergarten. Our kids are in their 47 years old. And Debbie's 47-year-old son tragically passed away last August. Her grief is so deep, I can't imagine.
It's awful. Like this incompetence costs lives. It costs lives in more ways than one.
It does, and your heart breaks because when you think about a home, especially, I mean, that lady, 26 years in that home. Think about all the memories. I'm, as you well know, Megyn, we're friends. I'm not exactly the softest, cuddliest type, full of emotions, but I've moved my whole life. We lived in 10 houses in 10 years. That's just kind of how I grew up. We were always moving around. And to this day, when I move, whether I'm leaving an apartment or a house, I don't get choked up, but I have to take a moment and say goodbye because you're looking at it. That's the living room where I played Legos with my sons, right? That's the kitchen where I'd come home and harass my wife while she's making dinner. There are so many memories that are built into those walls. And I mean, that's one story, right? We have the video of it. How many stories like that are out of Los Angeles? And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I keep coming back to these are the consequences of voting Democrat. They really genuinely are. You vote Democrat.
At least in the case of Adam and James Woods, they didn't. It's like, not that it's a comfort to see the liberals lose their houses, but, at least you'd have the peace of mind of saying, at least I didn't vote for this. At least maybe if my guy had gotten in there, we would have stood a fighting chance. At least others might finally see the light here. I will say this one actor, I don't know what his political stripes are. I've interviewed him a couple times on NBC. I really like this show, this actor, and this guy. His name is Milo Ventimiglia, and he was for the Gilmore Girls fans. He played in that, and then he became the star of This Is Us, a huge NBC hit show in which they tell you up front, like the beginning of the series, that his character, the dad, his name is Jack, dies. And so then the series goes on and you fall in love with Jack, and the whole time you're watching the series fall in love with the family, you're like, well, how did Jack die? Like why is Jack no longer here? You can see like future versions of the children older, and they talk about the missing dad. Then you have the flashbacks to the scenes with Milo and Jack's alive. You're like, anyway, the whole thing is around Jack and how did he die? And then the big reveal, spoiler alert, this has been out for many years, so, is that Jack died when a slow cooker caught fire in the family home that now you've seen 5 seasons of by the time you find this out. It's just terrible. It was like a devastating moment in TV history when you found this out. Anyway, this is a good guy. His house burned down in real life this week. And here he is on camera speaking to CBS News about it.
You were aware the house was gone. What's it like to then stand here?
Heavy. You start thinking about, man, it hits you so quick. You start thinking about all the memories and the different parts of the house and whatnot, and then you see your neighbors' houses and everything kind of around. And your heart just breaks.
He and his wife evacuated on Tuesday, watched on security cameras as the flames took over.
I think there's a kind of shock moment where you going, oh, this is real and this is happening. And then at a certain point, we just turned it off. It's like, what good is it to continue watching? You know, we kind of accepted the loss. We got good friends and we got good people we're working with, and we'll make do.
Yeah.
We'll make do. Yeah. Wife and baby and dog, most important.
He has another baby. He has a baby due any day now. He was talking about how they had just decorated the nursery. You know, it doesn't matter whether you have money or you don't have money. The loss of your home and everything in it and all the memories you made already and were building is real and it's profound. And I just can't tolerate the, you know, after I'm done saving all the lives, then you can question me. First of all, you were in damn Ghana. And that's the other thing, Jesse. Now the reporting's coming out from Breitbart, from Jim Garrity at National Review. She knew. Karen Bass had been warned for days. The National Weather Service was jumping up and down saying, severe fire warning. We are going to have massive fires in LA. These Santa Ana winds are at epic levels. It's not safe. And what did she do? And that was the Friday before, the Saturday before, where she heard them and got on a plane to Ghana. It's not like going to Seattle from LA. She went to Ghana. Sunday, the same. She didn't come back early. Monday, the same. She didn't come back early. Tuesday, as her city burned. Finally, she comes back Wednesday, and she wants credit in her soundbite for, I took the fastest route home.
Well, she's certainly not going to postpone a cross-world trip to Ghana for a little thing like her city, Megyn. I mean, I've said this for the longest time about politicians. Most of these people become politicians because they want access to the things rich people have without having the ability to actually acquire wealth. So they take positions of power and then they bloodsuck off the taxpayer. They do this all the time. These mayors, she's not even alone in this. These mayors, small town mayors will do this. Oh, no, we're on a fact-finding mission in Madrid this week. Oh, of course the taxpayer paid for that. These dirtballs in Congress do it all the time. You just saw Kamala Harris. They've got like 15 minutes left in the White House. She has no responsibilities and never had any whatsoever. But she's going on a round-the-world trip, one final vacation on the taxpayer dime to Singapore and all these other beautiful places. What's she doing? Is it some sort of critical diplomacy? No. She's living it up because she finally has that taxpayer-funded credit card, and it always clears, and that's what they do. That's why these people that's why they even want to be politicians, because otherwise being a politician would suck. You have to ask people for money all the time. People are always mad at you, screaming at you. So why would you take the job? You take the job because you want access to the things wealthy people have, but you're a dirtball with no talent, so you can't get those things except for running for office.
It's very funny. I had not actually heard the Jesse Kelly explanation of that, but it makes a lot of sense. Explains a lot of things. All right, speaking of Kamala Harris, let's lighten it up a minute. Lighten it up with the funeral of Jimmy Carter. It's always sad when somebody passes, but he was 100 years old. I mean, you know, he had a long, fruitful life. The most interesting dynamic was in the audience, right? Was in the audience as all these former presidents took their seats with their wives and the dynamics between them. And since we were talking about Kamala Harris, we'll start with this, as we are going to get to the Trump and Obama moment, which I'll show separately. But Kamala appears to be looking back at those two, Trump and Obama, yucking it up. And she does not look happy. Okay, like here she is. She's looking forward next to Doug Emhoff. She can see the two of them talking. She turns back. It looks like a deep sigh. Looks down. She's like, what in the actual F? Look at her. Look at her. What do you think is going through that thought bubble, Jesse Kelly?
Well, I think Kamala Harris, who is, I mean, this is saying a lot, maybe the most nakedly ambitious politician I've ever seen. Her entire career has just been one endless ladder climb, say anything, do anything, take any position on any issue in order to get the next thing. So that's the kind of person we're dealing with here. Well, what happened, the dynamics are, Barack Obama was the one who engineered the coup. He was the one who engineered the coup to get Joe Biden out of the White House. And not only did he engineer the coup to get Joe Biden out of the White House, he's the one who vouched for Kamala Harris with his vast donor network, billionaire after billionaire after billionaire. He knifed Joe Biden in the ribs, shoved him out the back of the White House, and then picked up the phone and organized $1.5 billion with a B to be given to Kamala Harris for her campaign, where she proceeded to not only embarrass herself the entire time, she embarrassed him. When you vouch for somebody with a bunch of billionaires and they flame out as badly as she flames out, well, he is not going to do that again. And without Barack Obama, without Daddy Barack carrying her, Kamala Harris is never, ever, 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 ever going to be able to launch a significant presidential run again in her life. Will she run again in the 2028 primary? Of course she will, but she'll get the 1% to 2% before she has to embarrassingly drop out the exact same way she did last time before Daddy Barack brought her. Now think about all that when you think about Kamala Harris looking over her shoulder back at Barack Obama. You know, I wouldn't put it past Trump to say a little bit too loudly, hey, how'd she work out for you? Or in the very least, if he didn't say it, I bet you Kamala Harris is thinking he said it.
That's a very interesting point I haven't heard anybody else make about how what does her future look like without the full-throated backing of Barack Obama, who definitely, you're right, has realized what an inept politician she was. Apparently had some hesitancy about her being the nominee anyway, but realized this is where this train is going, but now has lived it for, firsthand the way we all had to. So yeah, her, so much has fallen apart for Kamala Harris. She reached too high, too fast, and failed upward. Okay, but the more interesting thing is what she's seeing behind her, what those two guys are doing behind her. And before we zero in on the muckety-mucking that's happening between Obama and Trump, I want people to remember what former President Obama was saying about Trump literally in October, okay? 3 months ago. Listen here, SOT 22.
He acts so crazy, and it's become so common that people no longer take it seriously. I'm here to explain to you, just because he acts goofy does not mean his presidency wouldn't be dangerous. And you do not have to take my word for it. Lately, some of the people who know Donald Trump best have been saying in no uncertain terms that he should not be president again. The other day, General John Kelly, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, said that Trump told him he wanted his generals to be like Hitler's generals. Now, don't boo, vote.
So he wants Hitler's generals to take over, and he's genuinely dangerous. Cut to yesterday and the two of them. There they are chatting. Barack's laughing, genuinely laughing, to where like his body is shaking. Hitler's so funny, Jesse. Hitler's quite charming when you spend time with him one-on-one.
Well, you know who should be mad about that, but they won't be. But who should be mad about that are the little drones who vote Democrat every single time, because these people lie to your face all the time. None of these people think Trump is actually Hitler or a Nazi or a white supremacist. And before Donald Trump started running for president, he was a lifelong Democrat who was chumming up with these people at every single cocktail party out there. And they all loved him. They had Chuck Schumer, all these guys, they all loved him. They all talked to him. And Trump is an insanely charming and, yes, very funny individual. And they were all laughing at his jokes, and they know exactly who he is. But then when election season comes up, they know they have to ramp up the mindless drones into an endless panic that Hitler's coming back. And so they stand up and they tell people, Hitler's coming, Hitler's coming, Hitler's coming. And you have all these single women on anti-anxiety meds freaking out. Oh my gosh, the world's going to end. And then as soon as the election's over, they go yuck it up and talk about the meat lovers pizza they're going to share that night. I'd be mad if my politicians lied to me all the time like that. I get mad when the GOP lies to me, which they do routinely. So maybe Democrats should do the same.
Here is one drone who is upset about all the warnings that this was Hitler. And his takeaway is not, they said he was Hitler and it was a lie. His takeaway is, he is Hitler. And why is no one talking about how I am now going to be protected? Before I play this soundbite, the guy's name is Anand Giridharadas. He's an NYU, I think, adjunct professor at the journalism school. Watch.
What a shock.
I think people may be wrong to pick the proxy fight of Obama should not laugh at a joke. But I think we have to take seriously the emotion of feeling undefended. This administration rightly warned throughout the last year that Donald Trump represented the singular authoritarian threat to America. Have we been provided by this White House in its last weeks any practical guidance for how to live under what it claimed was fascism around the corner? That I am being warned and told that the apocalypse is near, but in actual ways, I am not defended by anybody.
I need practical guidance and I need to be defended. Can you imagine being a man and speaking like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're half a man if you vote Democrat anyway. But and I don't understand that mentality anyway, Megyn. If somebody told me that I couldn't go on the lawn, my front lawn, because there were landmines on the lawn, and then I turned around and that person was walking around the lawn, drinking a cup of coffee, I would think that person is a horrific liar who perhaps didn't have my best interest at heart. Yet these people get lied to repeatedly, and all they do, maybe it's a Democrat thing, is bend over and say, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" I don't understand that way of thinking. I can't relate to it at all, but whatever, have a miserable life, you sick freaks.
Anand, you really shouldn't be teaching this shit to journalism students in particular, that you need the government to protect you from the Hitler who just won re-election. Like, this is the message, I guess, to the incoming class of journalists, which means we're going to have a lot more of what we have had. I will say this in defense of male Democrats. The normal ones who are not woke or evil, whatever we're calling the wokesters these days, they have all sorts of reasons why I understand they vote for Democrats. And I know and love a lot of them. But I do think if you're looking around at this world as it stands now and thinking that you're getting better policies and better results with all Democrat rule, whether it's a place like Canada or it's a place like California, you're blind. You're blind. It's not that you deserve to have your home burned down, but you are going to get a lot more just like that if you continue voting against your own self-interest to make yourself feel like a better person. Jesse Kelly, you're a better person. That's why it's always a pleasure talking to you. Always learn something and always get a different POV. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you, Megyn.
All right. We're going to get to a little bit more news when we come back right after this. Don't go away. For those of us holding our breath for the past several months, watching the politics of this nation, we can finally exhale a bit. Work can finally be done on the major issues this country's facing. One of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, we're broke. And that debt that we have is a house of cards that cannot be quickly dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You might want to diversify your savings. This is why I want you to know about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, out of our president's control for that matter. So it can be really important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit. Plus, right now, you will receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle coin for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. A couple of other important stories to get to. Do you remember the day last year when Joe Biden reversed Title IX with a wave of his magic administrative wand, where he took a statute that was passed by Congress to protect girls and women in sport, and with the magic wand, completely gutted it. Just saying, all it is an administrative rule enforcing Title IX. That's all we did. It's just like, this is just guidance on how we're going to enforce it. But really what he did was completely gut the entire statute. by saying Title IX no longer just applied to girls and women. It applies to boys and men pretending to be girls and women. I mean, it completely stood the rule on its head, because one of the main fights, the main fight that's happening under Title IX right now for the protection of girls and women is to keep men pretending to be us out of our sports and our sports facilities and our private spaces in school. And this affects K through college. Well, Joe Biden thought he knew better. Joe Biden, who's having trannies show up on the White House lawn and show off their fake tits, thought he would do better on this than the U.S. Congress, which had duly passed the law and decided, or someone pretending to be the Weekend at Bernie's president, pushed through this rule change, which completely undermined the rule of law and the principles behind it. And it was a before and after moment for me personally, because it was the first time I've ever come out on the air in public and said who I voted for in an election. I had never done that. And frankly, it started a path that got me ultimately speaking for Trump the night before the election. You know, once I had crossed that line, it wasn't so hard to cross the next line to say, like, and this is who I'm voting for in the next election and why I think you should vote as I do. And so, like, this Title IX thing is very deep and personal to me and to most women I know, and most dads, not just women, men too, who have daughters in the system and who are worried about this issue. So just as a flashback, here is the day it came out. We had thrown out our show and decided to just talk about this abomination. And here's what happened. It must be undone. Do not comply. The rules don't take effect until August. Don't comply. Don't use their language. Protect your daughters. Fight. Protect your sons. Speak up. Don't comply. Don't comply. Don't let your child play the pronoun game. Don't you play it. This is going to be taken up. They're not going to get away with this. And indeed, now, that was April. In January of 2025, it has been taken up and the rule has been struck down nationwide. The rule is dead. God bless the judge who did it and the states who brought the lawsuit. State after state after state joined together to say, absolutely not. They want you to believe Trump is lawless. Trump has made a mockery of the justice system. Joe Biden tried to rewrite the definition of women without a single lawmaker weighing in. You know, never mind that it's God's decision and it's been rendered. He tried to do this behind closed doors and just say it was all about equity and you were a bigot if you disagreed. Well, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Virginia, West Virginia joined together and said, no, we are filing legal challenges to this absolute nonsense. And one of those lawsuits that they all joined in on led to this decision yesterday, on Thursday. The rule had already been temporarily blocked in 26 states as a result of these more red states joining together. But now it's officially stopped. It's been definitively ruled against thanks to a judge named Danny C. Reeves, Reeves, of the Eastern District of Kentucky, in a 15-page opinion, which just excoriates Miguel Cardona and the Department of Education for trying to do this, saying you may not lawfully expand the definition of Title IX to prohibit discrimination based on gender identity as opposed to sex, which is the governing standard, which means male or female. Female are protected by Title IX. And expanding it to people who identify as female guts the rule. That's what the judge found. The entire point, he wrote, of Title IX is to prevent discrimination based on sex. Throwing gender identity into the mix eviscerates the statute and renders it largely meaningless. Right on. Right on. Reading more here from the New York Times write-up of the decision. Citing the Supreme Court's sweeping decision in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo last year, which limited the regulatory power of federal agencies. Remember, we talked about this, how the Supreme Court ruled last term. The days of like letting these administrative agencies, also known as the deep state, to have this sweeping sort of legislative power that nobody voted that they could have are over. This sort of Chevron deference, as it was known, we're not doing that anymore. These are unelected bureaucrats. They don't get to gut federal legislation because, finger in the air, the times have changed. We think men are women now. No, that's not the way it works. So, continuing here, citing the court's sweeping decision, which limited the regulatory power of federal agencies, Judge Reeves wrote that the Biden administration had overstepped when it sought to enforce its new interpretation of Title IX through federal rulemaking. But more significantly, the judge also rejected, listen up, this is important to you, the revised rule on free speech grounds. Okay, so it wasn't just, you don't have the power to legislate, you're a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. That was a part of it. But equally important was the First Amendment piece of the ruling, which affects all of us when it comes to these ridiculous preferred pronouns that are being forced down our throats, not just in the Title IX context, not just you will call him a her and let him play softball against your daughter, but in the work context, in every context. State after state, including New York, including Connecticut, are trying to make it amount to statutorily, either under the civil rights laws or for civil liability purposes, hostile work environment if you don't call the he's a she at their request. They're trying to mandate the preferred pronoun thing into mandatory pronouns in order to be equitable and kind. And they don't care that you're erasing women and girls in doing it. Well, no more. Not according to this judge. And we'll see whether this goes up. Good luck. I hope you do appeal it. I hope in the time Joe Biden has left, they file an appeal of this, because I'd love to see this reinforced by the Supreme Court. It already really was in 303 Creative. It really already was. You remember that case where the woman refused to do the wedding website for the gay couple, and they came out and said, this is free speech. She's allowed to say, I don't stand for this. I don't support this. Okay, they say, this is the Times write-up. More significantly, the judge also rejected the revised rule on free speech grounds, writing that it, quote, offends the First Amendment by potentially requiring educators to use names and pronouns associated with the student's chosen gender identity. Not just the pronouns, but the names, the new fake names that these schools are suddenly, oh, okay, Joe is suddenly Georgina, and we're going to have to go along with that. No. If you're a teacher who says, I don't believe in that, I'm a Christian, my God tells me he doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't make a boy secretly a girl. I'm not doing that. You're protected under this ruling so long as it doesn't get reversed, and it's not going to. Don't worry. Put simply, the First Amendment does not permit the government to chill speech or compel affirmance of a belief with which the speaker disagrees in this manner. Yes, right on, Judge Reeves. Right on. Here's some more. The court goes on to say, the court remains persuaded that the final rule offends the First Amendment for the reasons explained earlier in a prior memorandum. To recap briefly, the final rule's definitions of sex discrimination and sex-based harassment, combined with the require Title IX recipients, including teachers, to use names and pronouns associated with a student's asserted gender identity. While the department insists that this is not necessarily the case, the new subjective harassment standard that need only limit participation in an educational program or activity quite clearly compels this result. So that's them saying, you can't say that this is not really happening. You're making teachers engage in this fallacy, and they shouldn't be, you can't compel them to do that. Now, look, this is a federal district ruling, federal district court. That's not the Supreme Court. That's 2 tiers down from the Supreme Court. But this decision had such weight in gutting the actual rule that no one's disputing it has nationwide effect, that the Title IX rule is officially done, as Joe Biden tried to revise it. And now what we have to see is whether it gets appealed, whether that ruling gets appealed. And here's the really interesting thing. In 10 days, Donald Trump is going to be the president. Hallelujah. And what are the odds that his DOJ appeals this? I don't think any. I don't think they will appeal it. Even just to get it to the Supreme Court right now, I don't think they do that. This ruling stands, and it will be used by many other plaintiffs and other courts who are trying to challenge mandatory pronouns like this. And that's a plus. That's a benefit. And over the next 4 years or plus, right? Like anybody who tries to file a challenge trying to force these pronouns down our throats or tries to redefine the definition of women and girls does so at great risk. With this Supreme Court, rulings like this, one after the other, getting on the books. And don't forget, we're already waiting for a ruling from this Supreme Court that's related in this lane. So my point is simply that the lawfare, same as the lawfare against Trump, is failing for the left. The ACLU is failing in its attempts to make boys girls legally and to make the rest of us pretend we agree with that. And the Supreme Court, I think, is weeks or months away from doing the same. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God, thank God, thank God. Thank God for these lawyers, these attorneys general who went in there and did what was right. Thank God for the presidents who have appointed rational judges who understand the law and not identity politics as a filter through which they view the law. And thank God President Trump won, because when he gets in there, he is going to undo the Biden changes to Title IX anyway. Let's not forget, there's a lot of problems with that law. He not only completely effed over women and girls, he also effed over young men on college campuses, remember, by completely lowering the standards by which they can be accused and convicted of being sexual assaulters or harassers and thrown off campus. President Trump's going to restore all of those protections. All of them. He's going to restore due process in Title IX, and he's going to actually change the wording of the rule officially back to what it was. But this is just one small area. There's not going to be any more pressure or guidance from the federal government, guaranteed, that it's a hostile work environment if you choose not to say somebody's preferred pronouns. So all that shit is ending. These are, I think in most people's minds, the minor victories of Trump. Like, most importantly, let's get the criminal killers out of our country who crossed the border illegally. That's number one. We're going to be seeing all that on day one. Let's make America great again. Let's restore economic prosperity for all groups across all spectrums, irrespective of race and identity and all that stuff. But this is big too. And there are a bunch of us who've been fighting for these changes. The list is too long. So many great women and men, but I'm just thinking of so many women who have devoted themselves to this issue over the past 10 plus years. And the legal eagles who have been devoting themselves, including Alliance Defending Freedom, which is involved in this, and these attorney generals who have made the difference here. And by the way, those of you who make donations to these groups, the Independent Women's Forum, they've been amazing. ADF, amazing, to try to get the funding for these lawsuits so that we can get these right rulings to protect our daughters. Well, it's happening. So, man alive, that's great news, is it not? I'm thrilled about that. All right. By the way, let me know your thoughts. You can email me, Megyn, Megyn, at megynkelly.com. And while I have you, go to megynkelly.com today and sign up for our once-a-week email from me. And it's basically, we call it the American News Minute. So you get all the news of the week in 1 minute or less. And I think you'll find it really interesting. It'll also give you a link if you want to sign up for direct communication with us, because we're a little worried about censorship, as I know you guys are. So we just want to make sure we have we never send you anything other than this email, and we never sell your email. None of that bullshit. I hate when people sell my email. Don't worry, we're not doing that. Anyway, please do that. So we have a direct relationship with you, and we can send you an email if, God forbid, we do get censored someplace where you know to find us. Last but not least, thank you for putting up with what has been a kind of fuzzy-headed, thick-tongued week for me, given this ridiculous cold, flu. I don't know what I had, people, but it's been a rough one. But I'm feeling better. My roid rage is non-existent. It's good. I took the steroid back. Doug made it through unscathed, so that's good for him. And I would say just make sure that you wash your hands when you're out in the public, because that's what happened. I ventured out to Montana, went to a lot of restaurants, and before you knew it, I wasn't feeling too great. On the bright side, Doug's been a champion. I've been doing a lot of work with the kids and doing like the drive so that nobody gets sick with me in the small car. And I finally started True Detective Season 1 with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, which is excellent, though disturbing. And I watched some very weird show about, it's called Sweet Bobby, about a guy who was catfished. That's interesting. I'm catching up on my bad TV. So thanks to all of you for seeing me through it. I'm sure I'll be better on Monday. And I hope all of you have a great weekend. Up next week, Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing. See you then.